The alarm bells rang through Terra Station at exactly 3 in the morning. Commander Jake Morrison rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his uniform from the hook beside his bed. He had been sleeping for only 2 hours after his last shift monitoring the deep space communication arrays. Something big was happening, or the night crew would not have woken him up. Jake ran down the metal corridor toward the main control room. His boots made loud sounds on the floor as he moved past the sleeping quarters where other officers still slept. The space station rotated slowly around Earth, giving everyone inside a feeling of gravity. Through the small windows he could see the blue and green planet below them, peaceful and quiet in the darkness of space. The control room was full of activity when Jake arrived. Dr. Lisa Bennett stood in front of the main screen, her blonde hair tied back in a ponytail. She was the best language expert on the station and could speak 12 different Earth languages. Her job was to figure out what alien messages might mean if they ever received any. Until today, that job had been mostly theoretical. "What do we have, Lisa?" Jake asked as he walked up beside her. The main screen showed patterns of light and numbers that moved across the display in waves. It looked like nothing Jake had ever seen before. "Something impossible," Lisa said without looking away from the screen. "We started picking this up about 20 minutes ago. It's coming from the direction of the constellation Lyra, about 1,200 light-years away. The signal is using quantum transmission methods that we barely understand." Jake stared at the patterns on the screen. "Are you saying this is from aliens?" "I'm saying this is definitely not from Earth," Lisa replied. She pointed to different parts of the display. "Look at these mathematical sequences. They're showing us prime numbers, then moving to more complex equations. It's like someone is trying to prove they're intelligent by showing us math problems." Lieutenant Dan Brooks walked over from his station near the communications equipment. He was young but very good with technology. "Commander, the signal strength suggests this transmission is using more power than our entire planet produces in a year. Whatever sent this message really wants us to hear it." Jake felt his heart beating faster. Humanity had been searching for signs of alien life for over a century. They had built huge radio telescopes and sent messages into space, but they had never received anything back. Now something was talking to them from across the galaxy. "Can you decode any of it?" Jake asked Lisa. "I'm working on it," she said, typing commands into her computer. "The mathematical parts are clear, but there are other sections that might be actual language. Give me some time and I might be able to figure out what they're trying to tell us." Jake activated his communication link to Earth. "Terra Station to Earth Command, Commander Morrison reporting. We have a priority situation that requires immediate attention." The voice of Admiral Frank Carter came through the speakers a few seconds later. "Go ahead, Terra Station. What's your situation?" "Sir, we're receiving what appears to be an artificial signal from deep space. The transmission suggests intelligent, alien origin. Request permission to begin full analysis protocols." There was silence for several long seconds. Then Admiral Carter's voice came back, sounding more serious than Jake had ever heard it. "Commander, are you absolutely certain about this?" "As certain as we can be, sir. Dr. Bennett is working on translation now. The signal characteristics are unlike anything in our databases." "Understood. I'm declaring this a Code 7 situation. All resources are at your disposal. I want hourly reports until we understand what we're dealing with." Jake looked around the control room. Everyone was working at their stations, trying to understand the alien message. The excitement in the air was mixed with fear. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. Lisa suddenly straightened up at her station. "Jake, come look at this. I think I've found something important." Jake hurried over to her computer screen. Lisa had isolated part of the signal and was running it through translation programs. "These patterns here," she said, pointing to a series of symbols, "they keep repeating, but with small changes each time. It's like someone is trying to show us star maps." "Star maps?" "Yes, look." Lisa brought up a display of known star systems. "If I overlay the signal patterns with our astronomical data, they match perfectly with the locations of stars between here and the Lyra constellation. Someone is showing us the path from their location to ours? Dan Brooks called out from his station. Dr. Bennett, Commander, you need to see this. I've been analyzing the quantum signature of the transmission. The signal is getting weaker. Jake and Lisa rushed over to Dan's station. The young officer pointed to graphs on his screen. The signal strength has dropped by 15% in the last hour. At this rate, it will fade completely within the next day or two. What does that mean? Jake asked. Lisa's face went pale as she understood. It means whoever sent this message is running out of power. They're using everything they have to reach us, but they can't keep it up much longer. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. So this isn't just a greeting, it's a distress call. That's what I'm thinking, Lisa said. She went back to her computer and started working faster. If they're calling for help, we need to understand what kind of help they need. The next few hours passed quickly. Jake sent his reports to Earth Command while Lisa and Dan worked on the alien message. Other officers brought them food and coffee, but none of them wanted to leave their stations. This was the most important day in human history. As the sun rose over Earth below them, Lisa finally made a breakthrough. She had decoded enough of the message to understand its basic meaning. When she called Jake over to her station, her hands were shaking. Jake, I know what they're saying, she said quietly. They're not just calling for help, they're warning us. Warning us about what? Lisa brought up the translated text on her screen. The words were simple but terrifying. Something is coming, something that destroys entire star systems. They call it the Void Swarm. It's moving through space, consuming everything in its path. Jake read the translation again, hoping he had misunderstood. Are they saying this thing is coming toward Earth? Not directly, but yes. If it continues on its current path, it will reach our galaxy within a few hundred years. These aliens? They call themselves Zephyrians. They're the last survivors of their region of space. Everyone else has been destroyed. Jake activated his communication link to Earth again. Terra Station to Admiral Carter. Priority emergency. We need to talk immediately. Admiral Carter's voice came through the speakers. Go ahead, Commander. Sir, the alien message is a distress call and a warning. We're dealing with an extinction-level threat to multiple star systems. I recommend immediate consultation with the Global Defense Council. Understood, Commander. Prepare a full briefing. You and Dr. Bennett are ordered to Earth immediately. We're going to need to make some very difficult decisions very quickly. Jake looked around the control room one more time. In just a few hours, everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, but they had learned this truth in the worst possible way. Somewhere across the galaxy, an entire civilization was dying, and they had called out to Earth for help in their final moments. The Earth Defense Council met for 3 straight days after Jake and Lisa returned from Terra Station. Politicians, scientists, and military leaders argued about what humanity should do. Some wanted to ignore the alien message and focus on defending Earth. Others said they had a duty to help any intelligent species that asked for their assistance. Admiral Frank Carter stood at the front of the great meeting hall in Geneva. Behind him, a huge screen showed the alien star maps that Lisa had decoded. Ladies and gentlemen, we face a choice that will define humanity's place in the universe. We can stay home and hope this threat never reaches us, or we can take action now. Dr. Lisa Bennett sat at the expert witness table, tired after days of explaining the Zephyrian message over and over. The mathematics are clear, she said when asked to speak again. The Void Swarm moves at roughly 10% of light speed. It has already consumed 17 star systems in the past 1,000 years. If we do nothing, it will eventually reach the Milky Way galaxy. President Maria Lopez of the Global Federation raised her hand. Dr. Bennett, what exactly are the Zephyrians asking us to do? Do they want us to evacuate them? Do they want weapons? They're asking for any help we can provide, Lisa replied. Their technology is very advanced in some ways, but they seem to lack experience with warfare. They've survived this long using defensive systems, but they can't fight back against the Void Swarm. General Robert Hayes, commander of Earth's Space Forces, leaned forward in his chair. How would we even get there? The fastest ships we have would take thousands of years to reach their system. Admiral Carter activated another display. We've been working on that problem. Our scientists believe we can modify the experimental faster-than-light drive from the Project Horizon program. It's never been tested on such a long journey, but the theory says it should work. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives worried about the cost and danger of sending ships so far from Earth. Others argued that helping the Zephyrians was the right thing to do, regardless of the risks. Finally, Secretary General Chun Wang called for a vote. In favor of authorizing a rescue mission to the Kepler 442 system? Hands went up around the room, slowly at first, then more quickly. When the count was finished, the motion had passed by a narrow margin. Admiral Carter smiled for the first time in days. Then we have work to do. I'm authorizing the construction of humanity's first interstellar warship. We'll call her the New Horizon. 6 months later, Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the New Horizon as the huge ship prepared to leave Earth's orbital shipyard. Amy was 42 years old and had commanded 3 different vessels during her career in space. She had volunteered for this mission knowing she might never see Earth again. "All stations report ready, Captain," said Lieutenant Dan Brooks from the tactical station. The young officer had requested transfer from Terra Station to join the mission. He wanted to be part of humanity's first contact with an alien species. Chief Engineer Ben Parker called up from the engine room through the communication system. "Captain, the new drive system is running perfectly. We're ready to make history." Amy looked around the bridge at her crew. Dr. Kate Sullivan sat at the medical station, reviewing the limited information they had about Zephyrian biology, navigation. Officer Linda Hayes worked at her instruments, plotting their course to a star system 1,200 light-years away. Security Chief Greg Thompson checked the weapon systems one final time. "Dr. Bennett, are you ready?" Amy asked. Lisa had agreed to join the mission as their alien communication expert. She would be responsible for talking to the Zephyrians when they arrived. "As ready as anyone can be for something like this," Lisa replied from her station near the communication equipment. Amy activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain. In 5 minutes, we will activate the faster-than-light drive and begin our journey to the Kepler 442 system. We don't know exactly what we'll find when we get there, but we know that an intelligent species has asked for our help." "That's enough for me," the countdown began. Amy watched Earth grow smaller on the main screen as the New Horizon moved away from the orbital shipyard. She thought about her family down on the planet below. Her parents, her sister, her nephew who was just learning to walk. She might never see any of them again. 30 seconds to drive activation," Linda Hayes announced. Amy gripped the arms of her captain's chair. The faster-than-light drive had been tested many times, but never on a journey this long. If something went wrong, they would be stranded in empty space with no way to call for help. 10 seconds, Linda said. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Ben Parker activated the drive from the engine room. The ship shuddered slightly, then seemed to stretch like a rubber band. Stars on the main screen turned into long lines of light, then disappeared completely. They were traveling faster than light, something humans had dreamed about for centuries. "Drive functioning normally," Ben reported. "Travel time to destination? 6 months, 2 days." The journey to Kepler 442 was unlike anything the crew had experienced. Time moves strangely when traveling faster than light. Minutes felt like hours, but hours passed like minutes. The crew had to follow strict schedules to avoid becoming confused about when they were supposed to eat or sleep. After 2 months, Linda Hayes made a disturbing discovery. She was studying the star charts along their route when she noticed something wrong. "Captain, you need to see this," she said during the morning briefing. Amy looked at Linda's navigation display. "What am I looking at?" "These 3 star systems along our route," Linda said, pointing to empty spaces on the map. "According to our astronomical data, there should be stars here, but when I scan with our long-range sensors, I find nothing. Dr. Sullivan leaned forward to get a better look. Nothing at all? Nothing, Linda confirmed. No stars, no planets. No radiation signatures. It's like these systems never existed. Lisa Bennett felt her stomach tighten with fear. The void swarm, she said quietly. It's already been through this region of space. Amy stood up from her chair and walked over to the navigation station. She stared at the empty regions on the star map, trying to understand what they meant. How many systems? At least 12 that I can confirm, Linda replied. Probably more. Captain, whatever destroyed these systems left absolutely nothing behind. Even the background radiation that should exist around old star locations is gone. Greg Thompson spoke up from his security station. Captain, maybe we should reconsider this mission. If we're flying into a region of space where entire star systems have been destroyed, we might be heading into a trap. Amy looked around the bridge at her crew. She could see fear in their eyes, but also determination. We have 200 people on this ship who volunteered to help an alien species they've never met. We have families back on Earth who are counting on us to do the right thing. And we have the Zephyrians who are probably dying while we debate what to do. She walked back to her captain's chair and sat down. We continue on course, but I want all defensive systems ready and all crew members trained for combat operations. If we encounter the void swarm, we need to be prepared to fight. The next 4 months of the journey passed slowly. The crew trained constantly, running combat drills and testing their weapon systems. Dr. Sullivan worked with Earth's top scientists through quantum communication links, trying to develop countermeasures against an enemy they had never seen. Ben Parker spent most of his time modifying the ship's systems. He combined human weapons technology with theoretical physics to create new types of defensive shields. The engineering crew worked around the clock, knowing that their modifications might be the only thing standing between the crew and destruction. As they got closer to the Kepler 442 system, the long-range sensors began picking up strange readings. There were massive energy signatures moving through space, larger than anything the crew had ever seen. There were also signs of a battle taking place near the system's main star. Captain, Linda Hayes called out during their final approach, I'm detecting multiple artificial energy sources in the target system. Some of them match the quantum signature from the original Zephyrian message. Amy felt her heart rate increase. And the others? Linda's voice was quiet when she replied. The others don't match anything in our databases. But they're huge, Captain. Whatever those things are, they're the size of small moons. Amy activated the ship-wide communication system one more time. This is the captain. We'll be dropping out of faster-than-light travel in 10 minutes, all crew members to battle stations. We're about to find out what we came here to fight. The New Horizon had traveled farther from Earth than any human ship in history. Now they were about to meet an alien species for the first time, in the middle of a war that could determine the fate of the entire galaxy. The New Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge, staring at the main screen in shock. The system looked like a war zone that had been burning for years. The star at the center of the system was dimmer than it should have been. Dark shapes moved around it like parasites, each one the size of Earth's moon. They pulsed with strange energy and seemed to be draining light directly from the star itself. Between these massive creatures, smaller dark objects moved in coordinated patterns, like a swarm of insects around a dying animal. My God, whispered Dr. Kate Sullivan from her medical station. How many of those things are there? Navigation. Officer Linda Hayes worked quickly at her instruments, counting the enemy forces. I'm detecting over 300 large entities and thousands of smaller ones. They're all moving in perfect coordination. Lieutenant Don Brooks monitored the tactical displays from his station. Captain, I'm also picking up friendly signals. There are ships near the fourth planet that match the quantum signature from the original Zephyrian message. Amy activated the ship's communication system. This is Captain Amy Rodriguez of the Earth vessel New Horizon. We received your distress call and have come to provide assistance. Please respond. For several long seconds, there was only static. Then a new voice came through the speakers, speaking in musical tones that somehow translated into understandable English. Earth vessel, this is High Curator Veltar of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet. We cannot believe you have traveled so far. To answer our call for help, Dr. Lisa Bennett moved quickly to her communication station. High Curator, this is Dr. Lisa Bennett. I was the one who decoded your original message. We understand you're facing an enemy called the Void Swarm. Yes, Veltar replied, and even through the translation system, his voice sounded tired and desperate. They arrived in our system 6 months ago. We have been fighting them constantly, but our defenses grow weaker each day. We estimate we have less than 2 weeks before our shields fail completely. Amy looked at the tactical display showing the battle near the 4th planet. Bright flashes of energy marked where Zephyrian ships were fighting against the dark creatures. High Curator, we need to coordinate our efforts. Can you send us information about the enemy's capabilities and weaknesses? We will transmit everything we know, Veltar said. But I must warn you, Captain Rodriguez. These creatures are unlike anything we have encountered in our 1,000 years of space travel. They consume energy itself, growing stronger with each system they destroy. Data began flowing into the New Horizons computers. Lisa worked with the ship's artificial intelligence to translate the Zephyrian technical information into terms the human crew could understand. What she found was both fascinating and terrifying. Captain, Lisa called out, the Zephyrians have been spacefaring for over a millennium. Their technology is incredibly advanced, especially their defensive systems. But they've never had to fight a real war before. Chief Engineer Ben Parker studied the incoming data from his station. These shield generators are amazing. They can protect an entire planet using the energy from the planet's core. But their weapons are designed for mining and construction, not combat. Amy understood the situation immediately. The Zephyrians were like a highly advanced, peaceful civilization that had suddenly found itself in a fight for survival against an enemy designed for destruction. High Curator, we're going to move closer to your position. Our ship is equipped for combat, and we'd like to coordinate a joint attack. We welcome any assistance you can provide, Veltar replied. But please be careful, Captain. The void entities can drain energy from any source. Several of our ships have been consumed when they got too close. Amy ordered the New Horizon to move toward the 4th planet where the main Zephyrian fleet was located. As they got closer, the crew could see the alien ships for the first time. They looked like living crystals, beautiful and graceful, but clearly not designed for warfare. Captain, Dan Brooks called out from Tactical, I'm detecting void entities. Moving to intercept us. 3 large ones and about 50 smaller ones. Amy gripped her captain's chair. All weapons ready. Ben, make sure our nuclear warheads are armed. If these things feed on energy, let's see how they like it concentrated. Dose of atomic fire. The first battle between humans and the Void Swarm began when the dark entities were still 1,000,000 kilometers away. The creatures moved through space without any visible propulsion, simply willing themselves from one location to another. They looked like living shadows with substance, dark matter given form and hunger. Fire at will, Amy ordered. The New Horizons weapon systems opened up with everything they had. Nuclear missiles streaked through space toward the approaching enemies. Laser cannons fired continuously, painting lines of light across the darkness. The ship's new plasma weapons, designed specifically for this mission, sent bolts of contained stellar fire toward the void entities. The nuclear weapons hit first. Each warhead exploded with the force of a small star, creating brief suns in the emptiness of space. Where the explosions touched the void entities, the dark creatures seemed to dissolve, their shadowy forms unable to maintain cohesion in the face of pure nuclear energy. Direct hits on all 3 large entities, Don reported with excitement. They're breaking apart. But the smaller void creatures kept coming. They moved faster than the large ones, dodging between the human weapons' fire like living liquid. Several of them reached the New Horizons shields and began to drain energy directly from the ship's defensive systems. "Shield power dropping rapidly," Ben called out from engineering. "These things are like energy vampires." Amy activated the communication system again. "Hi, Curator, we need immediate support. Our weapons are effective, but we're being overwhelmed." "By their numbers? Assistance is coming?" Veltar replied. "Watch and learn something about Zephyrian defensive technology." Suddenly, the space around the New Horizon filled with crystalline ships. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls reflecting and bending light in ways that hurt to look at directly. Instead of firing weapons, the Zephyrian ships created geometric patterns around the human vessel. The patterns formed into a complex, three-dimensional mandala of light and energy. Where the design intersected with the attacking void entities, the dark creatures simply stopped moving. They didn't explode or dissolve like they had with the nuclear weapons. They just became completely motionless, as if frozen in time. "Incredible," whispered Dr. Sullivan. "They're using some kind of stasis field." Lisa worked quickly to understand what she was seeing. "The Zephyrians aren't destroying the void entities. They're trapping them in suspended animation. That's how they've survived so long against overwhelming odds." Amy realized the implications immediately. But they can't maintain those fields forever. Eventually they run out of power and the creatures break free. "Exactly," came Veltar's voice through the communication system. "We can delay them, but we cannot destroy them. That is why we called for help. We hoped other species might have weapons we lack." The battle continued for several hours. Human weapons proved effective at destroying individual void entities, while Zephyrian defensive systems could protect large areas from attack. Working together, the two species created a defensive perimeter around the fourth planet. During a brief lull in the fighting, Amy requested permission to visit the Zephyrian command ship. She took Lisa and Dan with her in a small shuttle, escorted by two of the beautiful crystal vessels. The interior of the Zephyrian ship was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of living light, constantly shifting between different colors and patterns. High Curator Veltar met them in what appeared to be the ship's command center. Veltar himself was a being of crystalline beauty. He stood 3 meters tall, with a body that seemed to be carved from pure diamond. His voice created harmonics that resonated through the crystal walls of his ship. "Captain Rodriguez," he said, "we are honored by your presence. In all our history, we have never encountered another species willing to risk their lives for strangers." Amy looked around at the alien technology surrounding them. "High Curator, we've seen your defensive capabilities. They're beyond anything we imagined possible. But we've also seen that these void entities can overwhelm any defense if they have." "Enough numbers, yes," Veltar agreed sadly. "They have consumed 17 star systems in the past 1,000 years. Each victory makes them stronger, while each battle makes us weaker. We estimate they will break through our final defenses within days." Lisa stepped forward, studying the displays that showed the ongoing battle. "High Curator, our weapons can destroy individual void entities, but there are too many of them. Is there any way to strike at their source? Some kind of central command they use to coordinate their attacks?" Veltar's crystalline form seemed to brighten with hope. "There are legends among our people about a central entity that controls the entire swarm. Our astronomers believe it hides within the collapsed star at the edge of this system. But the gravitational forces there would destroy any ship that tried to approach." Dan Brooks looked at the star charts on the alien displays. "A collapsed star means a black hole." Dr. Kate Sullivan stood in the New Horizons laboratory, surrounded by displays showing data that should have been impossible. For 3 days, she had been studying the void entities that the crew had managed to capture during their battles. What she had discovered changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. "Captain," Kate called through the communication system, "you need to see this immediately." Amy Rodriguez arrived in the lab within minutes, followed by High Curator Veltar, who had remained aboard the human ship to coordinate their joint defense efforts. The Zephyrian leader moved gracefully through the corridors, his crystalline body reflecting the ship's lights in beautiful patterns. Kate pointed to the main display, which showed the internal structure of a captured void entity. I've been analyzing the quantum signatures of these creatures. They're not natural beings at all. They're artificial constructs created from dark matter and pure energy. We suspected as much, Veltar said, his musical voice carrying notes of sadness. But what does this mean for our fight against them? Kate brought up another display showing energy patterns. It means they're all connected. Every single void entity in this system is linked to a central control source through quantum entanglement. They're not individuals, they're extensions of a single massive intelligence. Amy felt her stomach tighten as she understood the implications. So when we destroy the smaller ones, we're not really killing separate creatures. We're just cutting off small pieces of something much larger. Exactly, Kate confirmed. And I've located the source of the control signals. It's coming from inside the collapsed star at the edge of the system, just like High Curator Veltar suspected. Veltar's crystalline form seemed to dim with despair. Then our situation is even worse than we thought. The central entity is protected by the most extreme gravitational forces in the universe. No ship can survive the approach to a black hole. Amy studied the data on Kate's displays, thinking about the problem from a tactical perspective. What if we don't try to survive? What if we accept that this is a suicide mission and focus on making sure we can complete the objective? Kate and Veltar both looked at the human captain with surprise. Kate spoke first. Amy, you can't be serious. You're talking about flying into a black hole. I'm talking about saving the star system and potentially preventing the void swarm from reaching Earth, Amy replied firmly. Kate, is there a way to disrupt the central entity's control over the other creatures? Kate worked at her computer for several minutes, running calculations and simulations. Theoretically, yes. If we could introduce enough chaos into the quantum entanglement network, it would break the connection between the central entity and all the individual void creatures throughout the galaxy. How much chaos? Amy asked. A lot, Kate said quietly. We'd need to detonate multiple nuclear warheads directly inside the central entity while simultaneously disrupting its quantum fields with our most powerful weapons. The explosion would have to be precisely timed and coordinated. Veltar moved closer to the displays, studying the human data with fascination. Captain Rodriguez, what you're describing would require a ship to survive inside the event horizon of a collapsed star, long enough to complete a complex attack sequence. The gravitational forces would tear apart any normal vessel within seconds. Amy activated her communication link to the ship's engineering section. Ben, I need you in the lab immediately. Bring the specifications for our most advanced defensive systems. Chief Engineer Ben Parker arrived a few minutes later, carrying a portable computer loaded with technical data. What do you need, Captain? Ben, could we modify a Zephyrian crystal ship with our nuclear weapons and quantum disruptors? Something small and maneuverable that could survive extreme gravitational stress? Ben studied the Zephyrian ship designs that Veltar provided. It's possible, he said slowly. Their crystal hulls are incredibly strong, and their energy manipulation systems could theoretically create a stable field around the ship. But Captain, even with modifications, the crew survival time inside a black hole would be measured in minutes, not hours. Minutes might be enough, Amy said. If we can get close enough to the central entity and detonate our entire nuclear arsenal simultaneously, the resulting quantum disruption should break the Void Swarm's control network. Veltar studied the human faces around him, trying to understand their willingness to sacrifice themselves for others. Captain, you are describing a mission that will certainly result in the death of everyone who attempts it. Why would your species make such a sacrifice for people you have never met? Amy looked at the Zephyrian leader and smiled sadly. High Curator, it's hard to explain. Humans have always believed that some things are worth dying for. Freedom, justice, protecting innocent people from harm. Your species called out across the galaxy asking for help, and we answered. We're not going to stop now just because the job is dangerous. Over the next 2 days, the combined human and Zephyrian engineering teams worked around the clock to create what they called the Unity. It was a modified Zephyrian crystal ship, small enough to be maneuverable but strong enough to carry the New Horizons' entire nuclear arsenal. The ship's defensive systems were enhanced with human quantum disruptors and energy manipulation technology. Amy selected her strike team carefully. She would pilot the Unity herself, with Lieutenant Don Brooks handling weapon systems and Dr. Lisa Bennett managing communications with the central entity. Chief Engineer Ben Parker volunteered to maintain the ship's systems during the approach to the black hole the night before the mission. Amy stood on the New Horizons observation deck, looking out at the battle that continued to rage throughout the star system. Zephyrian crystal ships danced through space, their defensive patterns holding back wave after wave of void entities. But the dark creatures kept coming and the alien defenses were weakening. Veltar joined her at the viewing window. "Captain, I want you to know that your species will be remembered by the Zephyrians for as long as our civilization survives. What you are doing tomorrow goes beyond simple courage. It is the highest form of sacrifice one intelligent being can make for another." Amy nodded, still watching the battle outside. "High Curator, if we fail tomorrow, I want you to send a message to Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity tried to do the right thing even when it was impossible. And if you succeed?" Amy smiled. "If we succeed, then maybe the galaxy will be a little bit safer for everyone." The launch of the Unity took place at dawn, measured by the New Horizons internal chronometer. Amy and her three-person crew settled into the crystalline control chairs of the modified alien vessel. The ship's hull gleamed with internal light, and the human weapon systems had been integrated seamlessly with Zephyrian technology. All systems ready, Ben Parker reported from the engineering station. "The quantum disruptors are fully charged, and all nuclear warheads are armed and ready for detonation." Lisa Bennett worked at the communication station, monitoring the quantum signatures from the collapsed star. "I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations from the target area. The central entity knows we're coming." Don Brooks checked the weapon systems one final time. "Captain, we have enough firepower to destroy a small moon, if we can get close enough to use it." The Unity moved through the twisted space around the collapsed star like a silver needle threading through a cosmic storm. Captain Amy Rodriguez felt the ship shudder as gravitational forces tried to tear the modified Zephyrian vessel apart. The crystal hull held together, but she could hear the metal components of the human weapon systems groaning under the impossible stress. "Hull integrity at 70%, Chief Engineer Ben Parker called out from his station. "The Zephyrian crystal technology is amazing, but even it has limits. We're pushing into regions of space where normal matter shouldn't be able to exist." Dr. Lisa Bennett worked at the communication station, monitoring the quantum signatures that grew stronger as they approached their target. "The central entity knows we're coming. I'm detecting massive energy buildups from inside the event horizon." "Lieutenant." Don Brooks kept his hands ready over the weapons controls. "Captain, our nuclear arsenal is armed and ready. The quantum disruptors are charged to maximum power. Whatever that thing is, we're going to hit it with everything we have." Amy looked at the navigation display, which showed their position relative to the collapsed star. They were now moving through space where time itself behaved differently. Minutes on their chronometers corresponded to hours in the outside universe. The New Horizon and the Zephyrian fleet were fighting a battle that, from the Unity's perspective, seemed to be happening in slow motion. "There," Lisa said suddenly, pointing to the main display. "I can see it." The central entity filled their viewscreen like a living nightmare made of shadow and hunger. It was larger than Earth's moon, a creature of pure dark matter that had been feeding on the collapsed star's energy for millions of years. Tendrils of darkness reached out from its core, connecting it to the quantum network that controlled every void entity in the galaxy. The creature spoke directly into their minds without using words. Images flooded their consciousness, showing them the history of its existence. They saw how it had once been a normal species, living on a world orbiting a dying star. When their sun began to collapse, they had made a terrible choice. Instead of accepting death, they had merged their consciousness with dark matter, becoming something that could survive anything but could never stop consuming. "It's trying to convert us," Don said, fighting against the mental invasion. "It wants us to join with it, to become part of the void swarm." Amy gritted her teeth and pushed the alien thoughts out of her mind. "Not a chance. We came here to end this, not to become part of it." The Unity began its final approach to the central entity. Space around them twisted into impossible shapes as they moved deeper into the gravitational well of the collapsed star. The creature's tendrils reached toward their ship, trying to drain energy from their systems. "It's feeding on our power," Ben reported. "I'm rerouting everything through the Zephyrian crystal matrix. That seems to be providing some protection." Amy activated the weapon systems. "All weapons free. Let's show this thing what happens when you threaten innocent people." The Unity opened fire with every weapon it carried. Nuclear missiles streaked toward the central entity while quantum disruptors tore holes in the dark matter structure of the creature's body. The entity fought back, sending waves of pure hatred and hunger that threatened to overwhelm the human crew's minds. Lisa worked frantically to maintain their communication link with the outside universe. "The quantum disruption is working. I can see breaks forming in the network that connects all the void entities." But the central entity was far from defeated. It began to change shape, condensing its massive form into something more concentrated and dangerous. Dark matter swirled around the Unity, trying to crush the small ship like an insect. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Ben called out as alarms sounded throughout the ship. "The gravitational shear is tearing us apart. We have maybe 5 minutes before complete structural failure." Amy made the decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. She reached for the ship's self-destruct controls and began the activation. "Sequence. Ben, I need you to overload the nuclear warheads. Set them for simultaneous detonation." "Captain, that will destroy us too," Ben said quietly. "I know," Amy replied. "But it's the only way to make sure we complete the mission." Don looked up from his weapons station. "Amy, there has to be another way." Amy shook her head. "The central entity is too powerful. Even our combined firepower isn't enough to destroy it completely. But if we detonate everything at once, right in its core, the quantum disruption should break the network and free every star system in the galaxy." Ben Parker nodded and began working at his engineering console. "I understand, Captain. I'm setting all warheads for synchronized detonation. We'll have about 30 seconds after I activate the sequence." Amy guided the Unity toward the heart of the central entity, fighting against gravitational forces that seemed determined to crush them. The creature's mental attacks grew stronger, showing them visions of all the civilizations it had consumed over the millennia. 10 seconds to detonation," Ben announced. Amy looked at her crew one final time. Lisa was still working at her station, maintaining their communication link so that the outside universe would know what had happened. Don had his hands on the weapons controls, ready to fire their remaining conventional weapons as a distraction. Ben stood calmly at his engineering station, prepared to sacrifice his life to save countless others. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," Amy said. 5 seconds, Ben called out. Amy aimed the Unity directly at the central entity's core. "This is for everyone who ever called out for help and hoped someone would answer." The Unity collided with the central entity in an explosion that could be seen across multiple star systems. The synchronized detonation of humanity's entire nuclear arsenal, combined with the quantum disruptors and the unstable space around the collapsed star, created a chain reaction that tore through the dark matter creature's body like fire through paper. The central entity's death scream echoed through dimensions as its control over millions of void constructs was severed forever. Throughout the galaxy, dark matter creatures that had been terrorizing star systems for centuries simply stopped moving and dissolved back into harmless cosmic dust. Amy opened her eyes to find herself floating in a crystalline chamber filled with soft, healing light. She was no longer aboard the Unity, and she was no longer dying. High Curator Veltar stood beside her, his diamond-like form radiating joy and gratitude. "How am I alive?" Amy asked weakly. "Our transportation technology can manipulate space and time in ways your species is still learning," Veltar explained. "We were able to extract you, Dr. Bennett and Lieutenant Brooks, from the Unity just before the final explosion." Amy looked around the chamber and saw Lisa and Don recovering in similar crystalline beds. "What about Ben?" Veltar's form dimmed with sadness. Engineer Parker remained with the ship to ensure the weapon systems functioned properly. He did not survive the explosion, but his sacrifice saved not just our system, but dozens of others throughout the galaxy. Amy felt tears running down her face as she thought about the engineer who had given his life to complete their mission. Ben Parker would be remembered as one of the heroes who answered an alien distress call and refused to give up when victory seemed impossible. "Captain Rodriguez," Veltar continued, "our long-range sensors confirm that the Void Swarm has been completely destroyed. Void entities in 17 different star systems have simply ceased to exist. The threat that has plagued our region of the galaxy for over 1,000 years is finally ended." Over the following weeks, as Amy recovered from her ordeal, reports came in from across the galaxy. The destruction of the central entity had indeed broken the quantum network that controlled all void creatures. Star systems that had been under siege for decades were suddenly free. Civilizations that had been preparing for extinction were now planning for rebuilding and growth. The Zephyrian High Council voted unanimously to establish a permanent alliance with humanity. They offered to share their advanced defensive technologies and scientific knowledge in exchange for human tactical expertise and protection. Other species, having learned that someone had finally defeated the seemingly invincible Void Swarm, began sending their own messages to Earth. Lisa Bennett became humanity's first alien ambassador, working with the Zephyrians to establish communication protocols with dozens of different civilizations. Her expertise in languages and her experience during the mission made her the perfect choice to represent humanity to the galaxy. Dan Brooks returned to Earth aboard the New Horizon, carrying detailed reports about the mission and the technologies they had encountered. He helped establish humanity's first interstellar defense academy, training new officers to serve aboard the joint human-alien patrol ships that would protect trade routes and respond to distress calls. Amy Rodriguez eventually took command of the combined human-Zephyrian defense fleet. She never forgot Ben Parker's sacrifice or the moment when humanity first proved that some species in the universe were willing to risk everything to help strangers in desperate need. The story of the battle against the Void Swarm spread throughout the galaxy, becoming legend among dozens of different civilizations.